So, welcome to the podcast. I'm Joshua Stabenow. What do I do? I'm a cinematographer. I do some TV editing. I've worked for Fox Sports, ESPN, done a bunch of different live sports filming, mostly ENG. Like, I'm the guy that's underneath the hoop when people are dunking. I'm the sidelines guy who's interviewing people at halftime, coming out of the breaks. I'll walk the sidelines and film basically the quarterback as he snaps and transition to the wide receiver as he catches it in the end zone. I'm giving a lot of organic looks that you see in sports. Besides that, I've been in the outdoor world. I've worked on a few different TV shows in the outdoor world. Behind the scenes, I've edited quite a few promotional pieces and long-form edits for different TV and different companies. I've been in the industry for 15, 20 years, just doing my thing.
Nice.
And I have on the podcast with me, as always,
Miranda Lee.
Miranda Lee. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Mm-hmm.
I like healthcare. That's pretty cool. Alternative healthcare.
Okay.
I like fitness.
Okay.
I like being outdoors.
Yes.
And most people, they want to put 2 words to my name. So if people like, okay, you can only use 2 words to describe Miranda. All gas.
No breaks?
All gas.
No breaks.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. What do you do professionally?
If you guys ever are on TikTok and you see all these chiropractors all over the place and they're always spewing a bunch of healthcare information, hi, that's me.
Guilty
I'm
as
the
charged.
problem.
Yeah.
It's me. I basically taught all those guys to get on social media to get new leads, new patients, and started a big problem on social media for the whole entire world because of the chiropractors. But
You used to do fitness stuff. Was really your first ever like filming or anything like that, or working with individuals, right? Like, didn't you?
so I worked at a grocery store, and when I was at the grocery store, I was doing lots of different like fitness stuff, and I went to school for personal training, and then I was gonna do some bodybuilding. I was gonna do women's physique. I was gonna do the bikini section of it. So while I was at the grocery store after work, so I'd work like 6 to 2, go home, take an hour-long nap, go to the gym, and while I was at the gym, I'd always record all of my workouts, and then I would save them into my camera roll. When I got home, I would edit them, save them in my drafts in my Instagram, and then I would post them at my lunch the next day at the grocery store. This was my first grocery store I worked at, not the second one. So, and then while I was at the grocery store, we would get like new products in, and I would always be taking pictures of the new products and then putting them on my social media to get more like awareness out for the new products. And usually I would always have a hand in picking some new products as well too. So, yeah.
You've been almost putting together a strategy for social media for how many years now?
Yeah, I started making videos on Instagram when Reels wasn't even a thing. So I was making short form content on my Instagram, and it was just IGTV. So it was going into IGTV. So if you look back into my profile, all my workout videos they never were into the Reels tab. There was no such thing as Reels or TikToks. There was like Vines, and I used to do Vines.
And a lot of times you've worked on all these brands and stuff, but you like pretty much just opened a TikTok, didn't you? And now you're hammering on your own TikTok. You're investing.
For so long, my dad was telling me I needed to do this for my own self, and finally it got to the point where it's like, shit, I should have been doing this, but then now the pressure is really on, but I just didn't. I opened my own TikTok. I had it open for a while, but I wasn't really like serious about it, and I just became kind of serious about it. I was posting like, okay, when I really got serious, I think I was with my gym content and like getting in front of the camera and like just posting. I was like embarrassed to like show you. I didn't show you for a long time because I didn't know what you would think, or I was kind of like embarrassed to show you or whatever. So that started it. got some good results from that, and then kind of took off once I started talking about my outdoors and the sheds and the pedicles.
Shed hunting, if you haven't seen it.
Yeah,
It's
just a
pretty
video,
awesome.
130,000. My account only has 3,000 followers.
But that many people have tuned in and seen it. It's crazy.
Yeah, spelling mistakes have helped on other videos.
You get all those grammar sleuths out there just making sure they have everything.
It's engagement, right?
Yeah, free engagement.
200 comments of people just telling me that I spelled pterodactyl wrong. Pterodactyl. Who's going to spell pterodactyl right? Who's spelling that in a daily? I did look it up, though, before I actually posted it. I did know that it started with a P instead of a T, but I didn't like the P in the front, so I just took it off.
Of course. Such a bulldozer thing of you to do, to just decide how a word should be.
It made more sense without it on.
Well, it's the English language for you. They literally have it set up so it's probably one of the hardest languages to learn because it just literally has all these silent letters for no reason.
Yeah, then we can just argue with each other.
Yep.
We all know what it says. We all know what it says. It's just pterodactyl.
We all know what it says.
We all know we need to go there.
If you're
there.
If you don't understand what she's talking about, literally she posted something about like
we'll just put it on the screen.
Wisconsin pterodactyl. Yeah, maybe we'll throw it up right here.
Yeah.
And
put the link.
yeah, put the link.
Give me a follow.
And
Buy me a coffee.
Sandhill crane is flying over, and it sounds crazy. And if you don't know what it is, I'm sure it'd freak you out if you're in the woods and you'd never heard one before. But so she put it up, and it's like, oh, Wisconsin pterodactyl, and it did so well. And that's the thing about social media is you literally can just post something that's just you being funny, and that's when a lot of the engagement happens. That's when a lot of the awareness, the renown, like everything builds because you're just being yourself. There's too many people out there that just try to have their gatekeeper up and be something that they're not. And a lot of times if you're just consistent and you put out who you are and you live within your passion, it's going to work out.
Yeah, the first TikTok live I did on my profile, that guy is like, oh my gosh, you literally look like who you are in the videos. Oh, that's funny.
It is funny. When we're talking about like who we are, like I think one of the staples that makes me who I am is my love and passion for the outdoors.
Oh yeah.
Just off camera before we started the podcast, I was talking to Miranda about how long I've been hunting, and I'm sitting here counting up the years, and I realized this year it's like my 32nd year hunting. I have 32 years invested, 3 decades. I've been doing it longer than you've been on the planet. Yeah. Think about that. That's crazy. And over those years, I've hunted so many different ways, from starting in ground blinds with my father during my mentored hunts to expanding and starting to hunt in tree stands, and I've used every type of gear set to go after whitetails that there is, from tents and ground blinds and mirror blinds and ladder stands and sticks and hang-ons to climbers. I mean, you name it. I've tried it. Mm-hmm. I've chased whitetails, killed them out of it, and I got things that I love to use, but it's taken a lot of years and innovation truly in the industry to get to a set of gear that I love, that I use every year. And when it really comes down to it, like, when you start to have conversations like this, there's too many people that are biased and they want to compare things like a Matthews bow and a bear archery bow or a PSE bow and a Hoyt. I don't really care about any of that. Like, if I want to have a conversation about gear and setups, I think I want to talk about, well, the difference between traditional and compound and crossbow and all of those. And I have maybe a different take than most people. Like, I don't care what someone uses as long as they're ethical, they're making a clean shot on the animal, and at the end of the day, they're enjoying the hunt. But how you harvest an animal matters to me. So if you're going to go out and you're going to just do traditional bow hunting because you think it's cool and you're not going to practice and you're just going to wound animals, then you shouldn't be allowed to use a traditional setup. I mean, it's no different than a guy who thinks because he's got a compound bow he can just shoot 50 yards when all he's ever practiced is 20, but he's got this monster deer at 50 and he's never taken the shot, but he wings an arrow. It also comes down to the woodsmanship of a lot of guys that do crossbow. I mean, a lot of those guys are weekend warriors that set up like a gun and you practice with it once, get it sighted in, and then they're just taking it out to hunt and they're not actually going through the necessary steps to make sure that they're ready in the field. And I'm not saying that everybody does all these things, but I would say a majority of the people that I've been around don't have the hunter integrity or ethics necessary to necessarily wield all those tools.
I would even say that your gear has elevated and changed ever since you started hunting with me. Like you ozone the shit out of all my things. You will literally come over, you will put it in my car, in my house, you bring it into the tree stand, you make sure all my stuff is good. It's I would say your arsenal of gear has gotten much bigger because of now adding on another hunter into the stand with you.
Yeah.
We went and bought that new stand. To add on to the tree.
Yeah, I mean, imagine being a 12-year-old learning from your father. I mean, I probably started hunting with my dad when I was 8. Mm-hmm. But we were ground blind hunters, literally making them every year. You know, my dad was teaching us how to track deer, how to find them, locate them. We started looking for them in the winter months, looking for their deer yard at a very young age, figuring out where deer pattern are for the season that you're in, not just in deer season. Why? My dad was interested in not only finding good deer, but finding the deer so that way we could harvest them in the fall and put meat in the cooler, right? So he was very serious about it. He took it serious, and scent prevention back then was a lot different than it is now. And being that we were hunting on the ground, we got really good at things that not a lot of people get good at, like moving on deer in the stand. Imagine having to move on a deer at eye level and what that takes to shift your hips and to move your whole body and how slow you have to move. My brothers and I, we figured out at a very young age how to be pretty lethal in the stand, but it came from being put in a scenario where you're at eye level with a deer who, I mean, they're literally looking for predators. I mean, all the time, especially at eye level, it was difficult. And the first year that I remember we got our climbers, I felt like it expanded our availability to deer, or the opportunity to deer that we never had before. You know, getting up above, the scent lines, being able to hunt even 15 feet off the ground at that time. We thought we were so far up in the trees. And I just remember when we harvested our first deer out of climbers, the feeling we had figured something out, that nobody knows. It's this secret, right? Because there wasn't social media back then. There wasn't any of this. And so just in your community, you'd talk about the things that you're doing to be successful. And over the years, everything has gotten more developed, has developed more quickly because of social media, and then the sharing of knowledge, and of course book writing. And then when you start to have TV shows come out and people where you can get resources on hunting, none of that existed. All I had was my dad and my grandpa to tell me how to hunt when I started.
So what's interesting about your dad, and I know your story of you growing up where you guys needed to go down to the apple orchards and cherry orchard and the strawberry fields to get those foods to help and you guys had to fish for your food and stuff. What's interesting about your dad is that your dad, he didn't just go hunting to go get the food to put on the table. He hunted the big bucks, and he taught you guys how to hunt those big bucks, and not just for food. And so he could have went out there and easily just got a doe if he really just wanted to put food on the table. But
and he did. Yeah.
And he but he also taught you guys more so that it would be more about the hunt too, not just putting the food on the table. Even though you guys needed it, he also had that, but he also made it a year-long thing. Is it it's a guy thing too, but I don't know.
I mean, my dad believed in hard work. We were making face cords of wood, and, you know, building shelters in the woods and tracking deer and looking for deer sign and all year round. You know, he was teaching us to read the woods, and a lot of that has transitioned into what I can do in the whitetail woods today based on his teachings I had when I was a young man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I lost my father when I was like 15. And so what he did is he instilled a passion, but then his sons, what we did is we took what he gave us, and then almost to like remember him or commemorate everything that he was, we just took it to the next level. And you know, the brothers have hunted now for 32 years together because of what my dad passed down to us. It's a pretty special thing.
How did your mom support that? And like, what did that mean to you, your brothers, and your dad, and like your grandpa? And like, how did your mom have like so many boys in the house, and you just seeing like your mom, was she supportive of this? Like, I imagine she was. Like, was she into it? Like, and how meaningful was that for you to have?
So, you know, obviously losing my father for her was pretty difficult, right? And her boys rallied around her, and we're a strong family unit. I mean, she's the matriarch of the family. And when it came to deer hunting, she was just as big a part of it as anyone else, because for 20 years or so, we probably went to her house, and that was deer camp, and everyone knew it. Like, all my friends knew. If it was the rut, if it was gun season, they knew where to find us. Would be at my mom's house. Like, even if we hunted in different counties, we always, you know, scheduled off time on the calendar to go to mom's and then hunt all the public land from where I grew up. And so my mom just got accustomed to, okay, what time are you coming in? You know, okay, I'll have dinner done. Are you guys hunting all day? What time of year it is? And she started to figure out the program as much as us. Like, maybe in the early season, she knew we'd come in for a couple hours, rest, and go back out. But when the rut was happening, she knew she had to have something warm on the plate ready to go when that sun set, because even if we got a buck, within an hour we're going to be home. We're either going to be showing it off and eating quick and going around the community showing all of our homies, or like, you know, we're going to come home and tell stories and try to figure out a plan for the next day. But she was always included, and she has only hunted a few times in her life. It was my dad's thing, but she probably has more knowledge and understands deer hunting better than most women, most people that hunt it that I know of, just from being around us, because we've had all the conversations. And she's gotten to a point to where she's been around it so much, she's so knowledgeable that she can sniff out bullshit when it comes to deer hunting. You know what I mean? Like, we'll have a conversation with someone and be like, that guy's just one of those guys who sits the same stand every year. Like, she'll know.
She talks
the
shit.
type of hunter. Yeah, she'll know the type of hunter. He was
good out his brush. That's why he's not seeing any bucks.
That's right. And then, you know, Matt went into earth science. You know, I went into TV. My other brother, he works for the DNR. So we've all done these things that have given us all these other talents. But at the end of the year, you know, in fall, what do? We all climb 20 feet closer to God and go after whitetails. Mm-hmm. That's what we do.
Yeah.
You know, and it came from my dad, came from my grandpa. Yeah. You asked me, you know, how does my mom deal with it? Like, my most favorite story about how my mom deals with it is this. I was too young to hunt. I was 10, something like that. My grandfather came up for a gun hunt. It was opening weekend. He had gotten off work. My dad had gotten off work. This was not a simple task for these men to do, and they did it. But there was this really bad weather pattern that came in. I'm talking like monsoon type rain, like 50, 60 mile an hour gusts of wind, like crazy. And I remember I wanted to hang out with my dad and grandpa, and so I had slept on a cot, like in our alcove, going upstairs. I didn't even sleep upstairs with the rest of the family. I slept downstairs with the men. And the men were going to get up, and they slept downstairs so they didn't disrupt the kids upstairs and wake my mom up, and then she had to get up with the kids at like 4 in the morning, right? Like, they were being nice. But there's a lot of hemming and hawing that morning. Like, oh, I don't know if I want to go out. I don't know if we're going to see deer and all this. My mom heard the conversations, because it's like quiet other than the wind blowing outside. And I'm sitting there with the guys, and we're, you know, my grandpa, my dad, and one of his friends and me. My mom came down the stairs. You guys going hunting? My dad's like, well, I don't know. And literally my mom's just like, you know, I don't want to hear that shit. You took off work, drove all the way up here from Racine. You took off work. Neither of you guys are working. I don't care if it's pouring rain out. Get your asses out the door. That's my mom. And so she wasn't taking no for an answer. It was like they were all set to go and they were going to go.
Put them in line. Get
That's
the
right.
mindset right.
And it was like, so there they are.
Brutal.
Putting on, this is even before, I think, the Blaze Orange days. So this is like, they're putting on their red clothes, I think was what was legal back then. And I just remember them leaving. And as soon as they walked out the door, my mom turned to me and was like, they won't make it to 10 o'clock. But there was no way they were staying in on opening day when they've been talking about this all year long. Mm-hmm. Right? And they're going to come home, and here's what's going to happen. They're going to be soaked. We're going to have clothes ready. So she's already preparing like another set of clothes for them to wear. She knows they're going to come in soaked. Then she's going to feed them and send them right back out. And it's literally what happened. They came in, it was like 9:30.
Wow, what
both
a wife.
Drenched.
What a wife.
Had second set of socks, boots, literally started to like blow dry their boots out, like literally taking care of them. Stoked a huge wooden fire in the fireplace, started hanging stuff around it. Literally, they hung out for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and my mom was like, the storm's gonna break, it's time to go. And like literally within an hour to an hour and a half, they went back out, and they sat the rest of the day, and they came in, they both shot deer.
Wow.
Now, did they have to go out in the morning and get rained on to find that success? No, but my mom wanted them to both realize, and this is something that me and my brothers talk about, and I'm sure I've talked about you, is like, you can't shoot them sitting at home on the couch. Yeah. Like, who cares if it's going to rain? Who cares if it's windy? If you have the right gear, if you're safe, you can get out there. The deer still got to feed. They still got to bed. And yes, there's some extreme conditions where they're not going to move. But it's such a small percentage. Like, I sit through everything. Mm-hmm. I don't care. I know we've sat through a monsoon. We've sat through some wind, and as soon as it died down, what happened? Deer stood up. Well, if we weren't in the bedding area when that happened, we wouldn't have been there when they started to move. Mm-hmm. Right? So
it's so cool that your mom is like that. Like, you also seen that too growing up, to see like your mom of that. One, she's supportive of your father, and then she's there making the food, getting all the things ready, and supporting him and his passions, but then also like it's supporting the family too.
Yeah. And
then she's like also making sure that he's having a good time, because like his brothers, like the family is all there. And
it was just my mom's dad. Mm-hmm. So it was my mom's dad and him. Now, my dad's older brother Wayne, big mm-hmm. hunter out in the Colorado area, he's doing the plain stuff. He's stalking whitetails by foot, trying to get over little swaybacks and trying to shoot them and all that. Like, so a different style of hunting, more elk, more like that kind of stuff. And so his brother was really big into it too, but like he moved south to Colorado where my dad stayed in Wisconsin, so it was whitetail and elk. Mm. But they would always brag to each other about whatever animal that they had harvested for the year. And so when it comes down to it, what is my mom doing? I mean, just basically what my family always pushes, and it's just like hard work. And there's no way my mom went grocery shopping, made lunches, started to think about what am I going to get them in the morning, because she wanted to be involved in it. So she was getting up and cooking breakfast. Don't make it seem like she's just kicking them out of there to kick them out of there. She had invested time and effort into being thoughtful enough to have everything planned, and she wanted to use it and do it and wanted them to experience it at the highest level they could, and wasn't willing to compromise that mm-hmm. just because it was pouring rain that morning. And
you can tell like her love and devotion for your dad too, for those things. Like my perspective on like deer hunting in relationships is that the women just despise it. They don't support their men, and I think that it's a lost thing in society. I think that some of the deer hunters not really deer hunters. So I think that's why it gives women also this like attitude towards their men about deer hunting. Mm-hmm. So like I think there's like a little bit of lost tradition into the sport of deer hunting.
But yeah, I mean, if I was asked what I wanted to do the rest of my life, if I could only pick one tool and hunt one animal, it'd be archery hunting for whitetails. I'd pick nothing else. Mm-hmm. That'd be it. Mm-hmm.
Like, you literally don't even take jobs that don't even let you
have off for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
like, that's how important it is to you and your life.
I go in and I say, listen, I'm pretty much gone in November, so you can hire me, but like 3 weeks out of November, I'm gonna be gone.
Yeah, straight up.
And so I lead with that all the time, and I've never had a place turn me down because of it, but I do think some places didn't
expect
They didn't expect exactly what I told them was going to happen would happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, hey, has anybody seen Josh? No, it's November 1st. He must be in the tree stand. It's like, well, I put it in. Everyone knew I was going to be gone, but they don't really understand, like, what 3 weeks is.
You're very firm on your word.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're very methodical, well thought out, well planned. So when you say something, that shit's solid.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's a part of integrity. It's part of the, like, that makes you who you are as a man, but as a person too, right? Like, if I tell you I'm going hunting, I'm going hunting. It's like, my dad and my grandpa, they got that foot in the ass from my mom, and maybe that's where I get it from. In fact, that probably is where I get it from.
Like, oh shit, it's raining
It's
outside.
exactly what
if
I
Mom
say
was
it
here,
is.
she'd be like kicking my butt. Like,
That's right. I mean, I sit in the stand all the time, and I'll see big deer, and I'll talk to some of my friends about, oh my God, you went out hunting this weekend?
does it feel like I kind of do this to you as well? Sometimes.
I think everybody does, outside of my brother Matthew. I don't think anybody truly...
No, like sometimes I feel like I get a little bit hard on you. Like, I
That's what I'm
push
talking
you.
about.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I'm... Okay.
Like how your mom pushed your dad.
I mean, it's hard to match that energy. I mean,
Your mom.
that matriarch, that lady, she's a special kind of old Norwegian woman that just don't exist anymore, right? And it's a beautiful thing. I mean, how she cares for us and taught us to love one another and push. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. I'd love to have her on the podcast. I was talking to her about it today. She's a little unsure, you know.
Even just like a 10-minute segment.
Yeah, it's
just like a 10-minute.
If I'd caught her 5 years ago, where she had good
start
hearing,
recording
still,
her on the phone.
you know, we'd almost have to like set up a system where, as I was talking, it was writing so she could respond, because she loves having conversations, but it's so hard to hear now. You know, she's just getting old, so we'll see. I'll just have to put on that Josh charm and be like, "Come on, Mom, this is a legacy piece. Be able to show this to my grandkids someday that we did this piece, and this is how long we've been hunting in our family." And I need her perspective on what it was like in those first early years of my dad hunting when he came back from Nam, and what that was like for him to find hunting and to have that.
Your grandpa,
was important.
and your dad. And,
yeah. I mean, I feel bad for my dad hunting with my grandpa, because, like, my grandpa was, like, the 2.0 of my mom. Like, this guy, he had, like, a heart attack when he was, like, I don't know, 70 years old or something, and then 72 years old, he's still having, like, dirt brought out to his property, and he'd call my dad up and say, "Hey, can you help me move some dirt?" He'd have the dirt dropped off at 4 in the morning. My dad would still be sleeping. He'd get out there with the wheelbarrow, move it all himself, and when my dad would wake up and start making eggs, he'd look outside, and the dirt pile's gone. You look at Art, like, what the hell happened? He's like, "Well, I wasn't going to wait all day." "What do you mean wait all day? What time did they bring the dirt?" "Well, they dropped it off at 4 in the morning, and I got up and I moved it." So it's like...
All badasses name are Art. Why?
So I can only imagine what it's like to be in the woods with this guy. Like, I'm sure it's just like, go, go, go. This is what we're going to do. Pulling a deer out with him, I'm sure there was no breaks. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure just the old grit of my grandfather, and then the stoicness of my father with the drive of my mother. This genetic code through my family, it's crazy. So, we were talking about gear, and one thing I want to talk about, like switching back to that, is with bows, with stands, with all these kind of things. Like, everybody's got their own thing that they like to use, but I'd like to just spend a couple minutes talking about gear real quick, just to benefit some hunters, especially if you're new to the game, if you're new to the hunting realm, and maybe it's your first year ever hunting, like what you should do. So I grew up hunting on the ground. Ground blinds are great, but the one thing about it is as safe as you feel on the ground, it also, the way your scent disperses, it's really hard. If you don't put them in early enough, if you don't brush them in, like, if you don't do a lot of things right with ground blinds, it's going to mess up your hunt more than help. There's a bunch of new stuff, like the mirror blinds where the deer can't see them as good. You got these new blinds where you sit in them and you can see out of them all over the place, and it allows you to see better. But at the end of the day, sitting on the ground for me just isn't a win. I don't like my scent blowing around like that. It's difficult. Maybe for gun season, definitely not for archery season. Would I sit in them in a pinch? Yeah, but then I'm gonna be super controlling about my scent and the direction it's going, and to me I rule out ground blinds altogether because I think I'm just going to educate deer when I sit in them, and I'm not about that life. Let's move to where I went naturally. The next step up was tree climbers. So tree climbers are great. They allow you to access and get into the air. But if you're one of those people that really likes tree climbers and that's all you like to do, this is literally all I have to say to rule them out for me personally, is this. If you close your eyes and you were to just latch that tree up and then start to move that climber up, where those bolts meet, those eye holes, a lot of times you'll hear just the slightest clink. And I'm telling you, any big buck hunter, if you're going to be in the woods and you have some sort of metallic sound like that, forget about it, man. Those 5-year-olds and on, they're out of there. They're not staying there. So, like, those sounds matter. Well, they've gotten better and put rubber or silicone and all this stuff, and they've sound deadened them out. I get all of that. But, okay, let's talk about the biggest problem with climbers. Biggest problem is like, let's say you go into a new area and it's dark and you're trying out a new spot. You literally have to find a tree that's slick, right? Like, that just doesn't have branches going all the way up, period. Because what are you going to do? You're going to get out there and then have your headlamp on or your red light infrared on, and you're going to start cutting branches in the morning before you hang your set just to get your climber past everything. Like, so now you're either going to have to compromise and sit in a tree that's not quite where you want it, or find a tree that doesn't have branches. And so now the amount of trees that you can sit in have just gone down, unless you're going to take the time and effort in the preseason to cut all the trees in your damn woods so you can go up 15, 20 feet. I just don't see I don't see how that helps you. And if anything, it hampers your hunting, and it stops you from being in the spot that you actually want to be, because you're going to end up making more noise than you want to, cutting down branches to get your climber up. Screw that. It's not for me either. What I do now is I use a hang-on and I use sticks. Now, this is not for everybody. There's an amount of physical fitness that you need to do this, and, in a lot of ways you got to be certain that you got to be kind of like athletic to do it too in a lot of ways, because sticks and a hang-on. Why? Because you don't need to cut a billion branches. You literally can throw your strap around, catch it, put it on, cinch it up, and you've made barely any sound. Now you step on that, and you go up a couple steps, you throw the next strap around, and you repeat this till you're up. Now, they have a bunch of safety equipment, lineman belt, they have the fall arrest stuff. You can use any of that to be safer. I've used it. I haven't used it. I've used it on some TV shows because we had to, not like literally use what is feels safe to you. But in a lot of ways, like a little lineman belt around a tree, and now you're completely safe going up and down. And yeah, if you fall, it's going to kind of smash against a tree, but you're not going to break your legs. And so when I start to think about, okay, sticks are quieter, I can put them in trees, I don't have to cut branches, and then you get up to the top and you have this climber, and most of these climbers nowadays have like self-leveling. Like, I use XOP, I love it. And now you can sit in crooked trees, you can change the seat, the way they bite into the tree too. I just love it. And you can use 3 to 4 stick setups. You can get really high up in the tree. Some people don't go up that high. Some people, they go only 8 or 10 feet. Like, whatever's clever. Like, whatever you want to do, right? But that's my go-to setup. It's because I'm not going to make noise. Like, literally, you've been in the woods with me. Do I use a tree stand or a flashlight to even walk to my tree stand?
No.
I memorize my
Highly
ways
unacceptable.
in. Highly unacceptable. When I'm putting my tree stand in, I do it in complete dark. What my brothers and I used to do is we used to go out before the season. We'd actually train in the dark putting our tree stands in. First, we'd do it with our lights on to get all the muscle memory, but then you get to a point where you're literally able to do it in the dark. And that's the way we do it, because we don't want to spook or educate deer. And so
I think you told me to close my eyes when I was putting in my harness around the tree. Like close your eyes and put your head up against the tree, and
Yep.
I think that's what you taught me.
So what we did is we were practicing at the bottom of the tree, and I
Yeah.
was training you to be 20 feet in the air and unclipping from the tether to yours and what that felt like. So I wanted her to feel like when it was dark, because we're not going to have lights, I wanted her to know that, okay, when you clip on, you literally have to be ready for not being able to see, and it's all touch. And so we did that first. And so when you get a setup that you like, and I don't care, man, you want to use climbers, go for it. And you think you got one that's quiet, go for it. And you don't mind cutting branches because you don't think it messes up your deer hunt, go for it. Literally, I'm not the guy that tells you not to do it. I'm just telling you what I like.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, 32 years of experience. I
Yeah.
think you got some good pull there.
yeah, I think the one thing that it probably frightens people to have sticks, because I don't know, I just 20, 25 feet in the air, most people that I hunt with, they don't hunt that high. And the ones that do are usually the new age hunters who, they buy the gear because it's cool and trendy, and they think, well, this is how you get deer. But it's like a useful tool. I mean,
We climbed some crazy trees with those sticks.
Yeah.
Like we went like around the tree and some crazy branches. Like we
Yeah.
stepped on a branch to get on the stick.
Yeah.
Like,
all that is so we don't have to create noise putting a climber in. So I use sticks just for that reason. If there was an area that I was hunting where it was all redwoods and there wasn't a lot of branches on the trees, maybe I'd use a climber. Maybe if I could find one that didn't weigh a lot and was a light climber and I liked it, great. But I mean, I can't ever see going back from sticks and a hang on until my freaking shoulders give up or I just can't do it anymore. Like when that day comes, I'm probably just buy some property, put up a freaking kill station and just sit in those and just pass down all my knowledge to the kids in camp, because that's the important thing, to make sure that hunting lives on. And so I don't care what bow you have, traditional, crossbow, compound. I forget about all the labels and the brands. Don't care. All I care about is that you put in the time and effort to be a good woodsman, to understand what it takes to do it safe and ethical, and that, when you harvest deer, you're harvesting them, as best as you can, not wounding deer. That's like really what I care about. So let's say sticks, hang on, then what? Okay, well, I like to use a bow hanger. Why? I like to keep that bow like right in front of me. Mm-hmm. Like literally, so if I hear deer coming, I can have that in my hand, pull it into my chest, as little movement as possible, and then turn on the deer. So a bow hanger, it's in my arsenal, goes everywhere with me. Another thing I like to do, obviously, tree strap, keep me safe. Little gear hook for my backpack. That's about it. I mean, pretty fine-tuned down. Now, obviously, you need a couple things to harvest, right? You need your bow, you need an arrow, you need broadhead.
rangefinder.
Don't care what you use. Rangefinder matters. Some rangefinders, don't work as good in fog. Some of the new tech that's coming out, literally you're going to have problems with it reading certain foliage that's in the way. Like, at the end of the day...
Oh, don't forget your little clip.
Yeah, your release.
Yep, your release.
There's a million of those, too. Like, all this stuff, besides sticks, besides a hang-on, besides the bow hanger, the bow that you want, all those things, like, just get whatever you're comfortable with and then put in the time necessary to harvest. I don't care what you use. I don't care if you use... the ones that you do with your thumb, the finger. I don't care if it's the tension release. I don't care if you use your fingers with traditional, the leather over the top. I don't care. As long as you are confident with it and you can go out and harvest and you understand your effective range. I think most guys, they don't realize, they just think, this guy said I need to go out and get sticks. And he said I need...
So you're saying the gear
hang-on
doesn't
stand.
matter?
The gear matters for higher end hunting, and what I mean by that is, like, if you're going after monarchs, you're going after the ghosts of the woods, the 4, 5, 6-year-old deer, you gotta have everything in order. You can't have your scent out of whack. You gotta know which way you're going into your stand. You gotta be able to use your tools to harvest. All of that
doesn't
stuff
sound like gear though.
matters.
The gear that we're talking about, like the bow, the release.
This is what I'm getting at though. Like, because if you have a bow and it only has, a 40-pound or a 50-pound draw weight and the kinetic energy is real low, your effective range is like 30 yards because otherwise your arrow's, got too much of a bow in it. And it's like, okay, well, my Mach 1 from PSE that I use, like, it's got a bunch of kinetic energy. I don't know what it is. It's flying at 320 miles an hour, feet per second, or some craziness. My effective range is 50, 60 yards easy every year. I mean, I have a pin on my bow that's 60 yards and I shoot it when I'm practicing. Could I even max that out further? Yeah, but I'd have to invest a little bit more time than I do to go any further than 60. And to a lot of whitetail hunters, no one's going to get a shot at a whitetail 60 yards in the deer woods unless you have cut lanes and it's your property and all these crazy things. Like when I go into public land, a lot of times it's a 20, 30 yard shot because you're in this heavy cover and you're sitting in an area where in this Bucks corridor where it's 8 acres and it's all frickin' swamp and it's a cedar slough and you just don't have that availability to shoot long range unless you're on a field edge. And so...
So most guys, I would think that they're gonna go after the monarchs. So wouldn't you think that most guys are just gonna be like, oh, I need to buy all the top gear for the monarch, even though they're not bringing back down to reality where like all the things you're saying right now about like you're not gonna be able to get like a 60-yard shot in the deer woods but they think that maybe there is that chance. So then they do invest in all the top monarch gear.
Yeah, it's like filming.
Or is that like good marketing then?
It's good marketing, but like everyone thinks they're gonna have better content because they have the best cameras. So I gotta go out and I gotta get a Red or an RE or I need that latest Canon or Sony or whatever. Right? But like if you can't film, if you can't frame a shot, if you can't tell a story, if you don't have all these other intangibles that make for good content creation, you're not going to have anything. Well, the same goes for the deer woods. Like, okay, you want to have all the right gear so you can shoot a monarch, but do you even know how to find them?
Right, and like how do you bring guys back down to reality? Okay, like instead of like investing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on this gear when you don't even know how to find the monarch, but you look the part.
Yeah, I mean, some guys just get
like
lucky.
Whatever?
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. But like, some guys just get lucky.
Yeah.
Right? Like they sit in the stand that's in the same spot every year and lightning struck once and they shot this big deer and that's the big buck stand on their property.
So like if it just makes you happy to have $1,000 worth of gear, it's fine, but is it really necessary to get the buck? No. Just basically like social media, how like when we were training social media, do you need the fancy camera? Do you need all the things? No, not necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't buy my PSE bow. They sent it to me so I could put it in content. Like $2,000 bow is insane. I mean, that's where it's like $1,500 to $2,000. But once you get it all set up and your arrows and everything, like it's a lot of money to invest. And if you're going to do that, I hope you're going to invest the same amount of time to be a good woodsman, to be a good hunter in general, right? Like, there's this crazy stigma that hunting has because of the Orange Army. And if you don't know what I mean by that, it's like the gun season with Blaze Orange. And I've hunted it every year in the state of Wisconsin. But because of it and those weekend warriors and some of the antics that they get into, it's created this stigma where, well, hunters are unethical and they wound deer and, bad things happen. And then, the drinking culture and all that craziness that can come with it. A lot of that hurts. And it's like, well, archery season is a beautiful thing because of that, because there's a lot less people in the woods. The deer haven't been educated as much. And so you have all these intimate interactions with whitetails that you don't get during gun season because they're literally like running for their lives a lot of times with the deer drives and everything else that's going on. It really shuts those deer down quick. So unless you have like inner property in the middle of a swamp like the black ash or something, it gets tough quick. But during bow season, you can play a lot of different tactics, and there's a lot of different times of the season where things change, right? You have your early season patterning, you got your preseason pre-rut, and then you got your rut, and then you got your post-rut, and then you got your gun season, but then you have all the late hunts, and then you have your late season food plot action and all that happens. There's just so much that happens during the season that when you start talking about gear and how gear is supposed to affect your hunt, it will to a degree, but really what it is, it's drive time, or it's like boot time, or it's like how many hours do you spend doing it, you know? One of the biggest pieces of gear that has elevated my hunting that I'd like to talk about last, and we'll put gear to bed for this one, but cell cams. Okay, so cell cams is one of those debates where I constantly get told it's cheating, right? Like you're cheating, you're using cell cams, and anybody can put out a cell cam and then not have to go out there and harvest the deer when you know they're there. It's like it's the biggest fallacy that there is to think you can just put out a cell cam and what, you're just gonna wait for one to go by. You put it on a main trail and then he's there on Tuesday night at fucking midnight and he's still gonna be there when you go out hunting that next weekend. No, that's not how I use them. I don't think that's how they should be used. I think I said this in the last podcast. Like, if you're putting one of those 30 feet away from your stand and you think that's gonna help, it's gonna hurt more than it helps, because any deer that's been educated, it's gonna see that, it's gonna get affected by the flash. If you leave scent on it, it's a dead giveaway. I mean, I personally don't put cell cams anywhere near my tree that I'm gonna hunt in. I try to put it on a trail that's outside of bow range so I can effectively know if they're on the trail that's going to lead them by the stand or in the area or the transition corridor or the trails between food and bed. I want to know when they're traveling so I know when to go into that area. But a lot of times once I have a good deer patterned, I take the cameras out of there and I don't do it. I don't just like go in and check them. Like I go in pouring rain, so it knocks down my scent.
Millions of mosquitoes.
I'll do it once the deer hunting season starts. I'll pull a camera while I'm in on the stand. I don't like to frequent areas if I know there's a big buck. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do, but cell cams, what that does is it allows you to go in there, put the camera, and then you can check it for a week without having to go back out just to check it. Because if it's in a good spot, you can leave it and you can pattern them from it. But if it's not, you know it, right? Like, a lot of these guys who are just putting out cameras that aren't cell cams are missing the opportunity to know. So they leave it out for 2 weeks, a month, a week, whatever, and then they go check it and they're like, oh shit, there's nothing on here. Or they go out and they check it and they're like, oh, there is a big deer. But the big deer was like bedded 60 yards away from you. You didn't know he was there, so now you just kicked him up. He's never coming back, so you just blew up the spot. Like, I use cell cams as a tool to know if something's there. If something's there, I don't need to go back in there and pressure it. If it's not, I know we need to go grab it and move it because that spot's no good.
Well, I feel like that's a necessity.
It is a necessity, but people think
that's probably like one of the biggest things I've heard so far that sounds like actual necessity after you explained it like that.
Yeah, and what noise you make matters. How you smell, your gear set up so you're comfortable and you can ethically kill. And then patterning deer is important. And
I do have one question. What is your opinion on binoculars?
Binoculars. I mean, they're good, right? Like, so the one thing that I've found is the smallest binoculars that you can get, like the 10 by 20 or whatever, like, they're so small that those eyepieces are kind of hard to see through. They fog up easy. I'm kind of in that 30 millimeter range is kind of what I like. I don't like the big ones like the 50 or the 40, but that 30 is pretty perfect for me. I like that. 40 I've used in some cases, but once you get up to the 50, I mean, to me those are more like bird watching. I wouldn't get those. They're just, and then they look ridiculous like when you got those giant ones on. And it's like, unless
you really know that you're a bird watcher then.
Well, I mean, yeah. But also the type of gear, like, some guys constantly wear binoculars, but like when I'm in like a swamp and I can't see more than 60, 70 yards, like, what's the point of binoculars?
So more for like fields.
Well, I mean, what do people do? They want to judge the deer, so they bring the binoculars up, all that frickin' movement. Now they're looking at it, and they're looking at the horns, and they're trying to decide if they like it. Heart's pounding, you're doing one of these numbers, you're making all this extra movement, like...
So it's better to have just the rangefinder?
I mean, binoculars to me come in handy when you're on a field or you have a long sight plane and you want to use binoculars to see whatever it is that's 200 yards away coming at you, 100, even 100 yards at you. It starts to get shaky because they can spot movement. And so, yes, binoculars work. If you really like them and you want to use them, great. I rarely take them out. If I'm taking them out, it's because I'm on some ridge lines or I'm on some open area that I need to be able to see deer coming. But if you're in some thick woods, there's just no point. You're just wearing extra gear for no reason. And so, how do I feel about them? Yeah, they're a useful tool if used in the right scenario. It's no different than, like, let's say you bought some rain gear and you just decide I'm going to wear the rain gear every day. No, you wear the rain gear when you need it. Because it's not going to breathe. You're going to sweat your ass off. You know what I mean? It's, okay, well, I want to buy this new product because it had really good marketing and it says, I can range deer through the binoculars. Oh, that's cool. I'd love to know that. Okay, well, great, but don't you have a rangefinder for that? And, like, they're 3 power nowadays. Can't you just use your rangefinder and range the deer as soon as you see it 100 yards away and see if it's a good deer? Like, I use, like, a Leopold rangefinder that's such clear optics. Like, I don't see the need to have binoculars too. Now, this is whitetail hunting in Wisconsin. I'm sure if I was out in some swaybacks in Colorado or if I was up in Alaska going after moose, binoculars would be more of a thing. And then you're going to have spot and scopes and the whole thing. But I'm literally just talking about whitetail hunting in Wisconsin.
To wrap up the gear thing, basically saying don't make an excuse that you can't shoot bucks if you don't have the right gear. Like, don't give an excuse to just say, oh, I don't have the right bow or I don't have the right gear, so I can't go hunting or I can't get the big bucks. Like, don't give yourself those excuses to not do.
I mean, how do you shoot big deer? How do you even find them? Like, you have to be a self-educated learner. You have to go out and find resources because you're not just going to know it. And there's not a lot of people that have the knowledge that can pass it down to help you harvest. And a lot of times people don't want to tell you their secrets. Like, what they do to get the big buck. It's no different than somebody being like, well, that buck's mine. I got him on my scouting camera. He's mine. No, he's not. He's a wild fucking animal. Unless you got them penned in Texas, they, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to go wherever they want to go, and they're going to chase some hot tail once the rut comes around, and you might not see him again. Or you might see a different deer from a mile away. You know what I mean? They're outside their core areas, and they're hammering around. How do you shoot a big deer? This is it. This is what it comes down to. You have to get out in the woods, and you have to figure out whitetails to a degree to where you'll better understand where they are transitionally between the seasons, in the different seasons. And at the end of the day, like, I believe that deer season never ends, right? Like, so the deer season just ended in January. February, I'm out. Boot time. Looking for beds, trying to find the deer yards. Why? Because I'm a GPS locate them. Why? Because after the last snowfall like we just had, what am I going to do? I'm going to go out, I'm going to find those beds. I'm going to look at the GPS locations from the middle of winter where they were, see if they're in that same core area. Then I'm going to look at aerial footage or topos, and I'm going to find out where the nearest fields are. Now I'm going to try to find the trails that go to those, and I'm going to look for the open fields that are getting thawed out the quickest because they're going to have little shoots of grass and things that come up, and I'm going to start to look for the food sources that they're on. Why do I do all this? Why does deer season never end for me? It's because I want to know where the deer are. So when the snow is gone, this time of year when they start showing pedicles because they've lost their antlers, I want to be able to go back to these areas where they are, where they're frequenting right now, and go find antlers. Why? Because when you find something like this, and then you pattern that deer with cell cams, you start to raise the opportunity level of shooting that deer. Well, if I went out and found out where he was bedding in the winter, and then wouldn't have found out where he's bedding in that last snowfall, and then found his antlers 2 weeks later, and then GPS that, and then kind of triangulated it with the fields, and then started to look at, okay, when's he traveling through here? And I put cameras, he's nocturnal the whole time because he's a freaking 9-year-old deer when I shot him. When I found him here, he was 5. And, you start to figure out deer like that. Well, it starts in January. It starts in February. Like, if you're not going to pick up any of your bow equipment till September, then you're really dealing with a lot more luck. Or you kind of have these stands that you like to frequent or whatever. But, like, I don't own property. Like, I do it all on public land. And when it comes down to it, like, what my success is highly determined by how much I put in. And so for me, I like to get out in January and February. I mean, I've probably walked, I don't know, 60, 70 miles already in the couple weeks that sheds have been kicking out onto the ground. And I'm probably going to walk another 40 or 50 looking for more sheds because I haven't found what I consider a monarch shed yet this year, and I'm going to just keep pushing. It's been the weirdest year. So most of the time you'd go out and you'd find deer yards and you'd go out the last snow and you'd find these deer. But this year it's been so mild, there's no snow. So like I have no idea based on finding beds that I would normally find where they are this year. So a lot of it is coming down to like the old tracking stuff that my dad told me where I'm literally now looking for what he calls a 308 track. He used to laugh and joke about how a 308 shell would fit between the toes of a monster buck. And so going out and trying to find these big tracks and then following them and trying to cut trails where they're going both directions and like almost doing like the old school tactics of trying to find out where these deer are. That's what I've been doing, and it's been tough going. We got a little bit of snow the day before last. I want to get out tomorrow and do some more shed hunting, but literally what I'm going to be going out and doing is looking for beds first. So that way if we don't find sheds, I can drop a pin and I can go back out there in a week or two. Because just because they haven't dropped now, there's a bunch of deer still holding. Well, in a week there won't be as many, and in 2 weeks there won't be as many, and in 3 weeks they'll all be dropped. It's going to be like that. So you got this big push right now where you need to find out and capitalize on where the deer are, but if you can't see where they are, in a lot of ways this snowfall that we had that everyone's complaining about, it's a godsend for people like me that deer season's still going on. I'm planning on next year. Well, I got to find the deer now, right? And so one of the biggest things is you need this time of year, especially with the conditions we have, you need good rubber boots. I mean, your boots matter year round, right, to keep your feet warm. I mean, they got a lot of fancy shit now, like the Oro vests and the electric socks and all that, and they'll make it easier for you to sit out there. But man, when you're putting in hundreds of miles a year on boots, you better make sure you have some good ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're going to keep your feet wet because you ain't getting trench foot and walking around and think you're going to be out there for 6 miles if your feet are getting wet because you didn't plan properly, you know. So what makes the two of us the people that we are? I mean, I think just from listening to me talk about deer hunting, you can tell how serious I get about things. But like there's this word that's been used a lot for you, Miranda, and I feel like I am too, and I'd like to just touch on it because there's like this grit that it takes to be a really good outdoorsman. There's this grit to be, you know, in the TV world that you need to have in marketing when you're talking to people, when you're trying to work on a brand or when you're trying to elevate anything. There's a level of accountability that needs to happen, and a lot of times you got to have direct communication or direct conversations with people, like, you know, and it gets tough. And I know that you've been called what's called a bulldozer in the past. I think of myself as one too. That's something that we have in common. Like when someone calls you that, to me it's a compliment. I don't know if everyone would think so because
not at certain times.
Yeah, I mean, those people most likely have insecurities and they don't understand that determination that you have, and that's their knee-jerk reaction is to label you and say that you're a bulldozer. Almost like a negative connotation, but I always take it as positive. Like, fuck yeah, she is.
Except when I try to bulldoze you.
Well, yeah. But I appreciate it. There's many times that afterwards, right? Like, I'm like, wow, thanks for pushing me on that one.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that. And a lot of times that self-diagnostic is needed, right? Like, you got to, like, look at yourself and reflect and say, wow, was she right? Or was that person right? Or how did I come off there? And that's like being an empath or, you know, being empathetic towards anything or anybody or a situation, being able to talk about it. But to me, bulldozing is maybe something different than you. Like, how would you describe being a bulldozer?
I'm a bulldozer to the point of taking it such to a personal level and having such direct conversations. Like, I will literally go up to you and just say, that sucks. Just because that's my terminology. Like, it's not because, like, I'm trying to be a jerk. Just gonna say, like, that's how I use my expressive words. It's an expression word to me. Sucks. That literally sucks. That's shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not your approved English terminology, but that's just the fastest way I could get you to understand that really just sucks.
Yeah.
I think my bulldozerness also kind of gets me in trouble because, like, I really just push hard because I'm also very optimistic because I think I always see the good, but I want to try to get to those results and get to results fast. Like, I'm not patient about it, too. I'm patient to a point, but my patience is really thin compared to yours, especially. Like, when we're in the woods, you're kind of slow for me sometimes. So I kind of, like, I veer off. And you're like, where did you go? Why don't you stay next to me? I'm like, well, I saw this little thing, and I want to go fast. And I want to, also I'm doing my TikToks, too. But, like,
Yeah.
So my bulldozer has definitely gotten me in trouble. But also, it's, I don't know. I think you're the one who appreciates it a lot. My dad appreciates it a lot. People who are in my life who know my bulldozer also need to, like, be very bluntly honest with me. Like, hey, like, I hear you. We're gonna do this. Like, and so you gotta,
Yeah. I think when it comes to me being a bulldozer, it shows in a lot of different aspects of my life, but, like, where it comes from for me, like, I kind of say it like this. It's like, I'm a peace person. Like, I prefer to live in peace. I like to have peaceful communication. I like things to happen and be peaceful. But a lot of times, the only way you can get to peace is through control perfect. And what I mean by that is, like, I will want it to be peaceful, but it better be fucking perfect. Or I'm going to take control and make sure that it pushes towards that because my control perfect is always screaming towards peace.
Yeah, you're very even on that.
And so what I mean by that is this. It's like I could be sitting in a meeting. I could be talking to somebody. And I want everyone to just be accountable and do everything that they're supposed to do. But if they're not, and if something's getting behind, if there's marketing that's not being done, if there's, content not going out properly, or if somebody's just trying to shortcut things that I know that need to get done, I'm probably going to lean in, and I'm going to lean in hard.
Man, me and you together, it's like, ouch, walking into rooms with us because, like, shit doesn't get past us. Me and you, like, my perfect is super low. It's the lowest I have. It's the lowest scoring I have. I don't have perfect. I have friggin' bulldozer dominates my whole entire chart. And then fun comes next, and then peace, and then perfect.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just like, I'm going to go fucking crush. I don't care who needs to get this done. I will figure out the way to get it done. And then I have you alongside me too, and you're like, I know exactly how to get this done. I'm gonna get it done now. So it's like me and you, whatever we do, we're literally unstoppable.
I like that. I think to add to that,
Yeah.
And when it really comes down to it, right? Like no ego stroke, no nothing. Like, I know I can get a lot of things done.
Yeah.
And so if somebody is unable to do it, they're wavering, they're taking too much time, I might help it along. And a lot of times people are intimidated by that, or, they might think, well, you're overstepping or whatever. But, like, literally between you and I, if we're going to put a tree stand in a tree, I'm fucking doing it. Why? Because I can put it in quietly. I can put it in quickly. Yeah. Safely. And why would I allow you to fumble through it when you don't have enough drive time to put it in?
Yes. I step aside. It's not because I'm not confident. It's literally because I know you're the best at it.
Yeah, but between us, for sure. I mean, is there some guy out there that
place where you can
beat me putting up a tree stand, and I don't need a bunch of people in the comments being like, oh, I can put a tree stand in better than you. I don't care. I don't care. I know and I'm confident in my set of skills that I can get into the woods, in and out, safely,
Yeah.
undetected, not educate deer, and enjoy my hunting to its fullest. Right? Well, same thing happens in meeting rooms, right? Like when I'm trying to build brands or I'm innovating for companies, a lot of times you've seen me in meetings. I'll sit back and I'll let everybody participate, go around the room and everybody's talking, but at some point I almost get triggered, or at like some point I've had enough. Right? Because you can tell when everyone's just wasting everyone else's time because they're not prepared for the meeting. They didn't come in with anything to add to the meeting, and I'm over prepared. Like literally I could come in and just say exactly what needs to happen, pass off everybody's accountability, and that meeting could have been 5 minutes, like for me, like in my mind.
It didn't even need to happen.
That's right. I could have just walked around individually, and rather than take up everybody's time and lose all those labor hours, we could have just had me set a plan, a strategy forth, and I could have just passed off accountabilities and we could have went away. It doesn't always happen like that though, because here's the thing: everybody's got these egos. Everybody's got like this way that they would prefer it to go. Like,
Oh, so they're following these like little like everyone gets along and all this like the little stupid
Yeah.
shit about what's going on in our society about like everyone just needs to participate and shit. No, not when you're making money, not when you're running a business. I'm sorry, when you're running a business and you need to make money, you're gonna want your best player doing this.
Yeah,
no, you can't just. I'm not
gonna
just gonna
bench
go
Michael Jordan.
let someone else
Yeah.
just try it.
Yeah.
Not when it comes down to making money and and building a business. No, you let someone try when you're like at home with your kids. You let your kids try. You don't let someone who you're paying to try for your business.
yeah, and you need people to get drive time to get good at what they want, but like Kobe
you're gonna
Bryant
come
talked
alongside
about,
me and I'm
yeah,
gonna coach you while
Right.
you watch me do this.
Of course,
I'm not gonna-
hands-on training is drive time is the most important thing. I was gonna say, Kobe Bryant talked about this, right? Like he would get up and he would do his first workout at 4, take 2 hours off, be at 6, go home, come back at 10, come back at 2, come back at 4. He's getting 4 training sessions in, then the guy that he knows that's on his team is getting up at 11, training at 12, takes 2 hours off, now he's at 2. Kobe's putting in so much more time practicing because he's doing 4 practices in a day as opposed to 2 or 3 that you'll never catch up. Well, because of that, he would get into situations in games where a guy could be wide open and Kobe's not even going to pass him the ball because he doesn't trust him. He hasn't put in the drive time. He hasn't put in the practice time to actually like hone his craft enough to where Kobe would trust him. Kobe would rather just force it up over 3 guys. He talked about this all the time. Why? Because he was practicing that shit in practice all the time. And so when it comes down to it, it's like your best players, if you really want to think about it as simple as this, are your best players because they were talented and skilled, but then the ones that transcend are the ones that put in the time
Yes.
and the effort because they were passionate about it and they wanted to win so bad that they time managed themselves enough to put in more time than anyone else.
It's like what people say, the people who are asking the questions the most and wanting
Yeah.
to learn.
Yeah.
Like those are the people you want to invest in. Not the people who are going to complain, oh, Joshua never invested in me. Like Joshua never comes and pours. When did you come and ever ask me a
Right.
question? When did
Yeah.
you ever ask me how to do this or make this better? I'm not going to go and pour into you when you're not even asking for it.
Well, I'm the type of person that wants everyone to win, right? So a lot of times I waste my time pouring into the wrong people because I think it'll benefit them and it should, but they don't understand how much I'm actually leaning in and trying to help out so they have personal growth and they get better at their position and they understand the level that they can obtain with a little bit of bulldozer push, right? Because a lot of times people will just get to a comfort zone and they'll just stay there. That's with anything. That's with business, filming, cameras, editing, marketing, freaking hunting, right? Like, how do you get good at hunting? Well, you got to put in the time. You got to put in the research. Do you know why? I wasn't always this guy, right? Like, so I filmed for a bunch of different outdoor places, and I got to backpack up mountains and film people and be around some of the best hunters, and I learned from seeing them do it, but then I had to put it into action. Also with that, like, I had a younger brother who literally was shooting monster deer all the time, and I was in college, and he had more time to put towards it, but it kind of fueled this fire where my younger brother was kicking my ass. And so what did I start to do? Well, I couldn't be in the woods like he was because I was in the city, so I started to read books, watch videos, and I started to build this knowledge that he didn't have. And I wasn't telling him that I was doing it, right? So I was bringing in all these new tactics and all these things and creating mock scrapes and doing all these things that he had never done before, and I started to have success, and then I started to tell him what was going on, and before you knew it, there was like this healthy rivalry in our 20s and 30s where it was like we were both trying to outduel each other to get the biggest buck, and we fed into one another. And it wasn't until we really started to hunt together, like in stand together and film one another, where we really started to pick up on all the intricacies that made each one of us good. But now together we were learning what the other one did, and now we became great. Because we put down that superficial challenge where it's like, oh, he's my younger brother, he can't be better than me, and I can't let my older brother know my secrets. Well, now it's like, well, what if it's our family secrets, and what if we can go out and do this and replicate this, and then everyone's just going to be like, oh, you guys are so lucky. Yeah, I'm so lucky to walk 100 miles during shed season. I'm so lucky that I run 9 cameras on a property, and I'm out there every other week and moving cameras around and finding deer and, looking at wind directions. And then, every time I'm in the woods, I'm taking note of trees that I could sit, so that way, like, imagine on a parcel, like 40
It's like
acres.
annoying when someone says you're just lucky.
Oh, it drives
But you're
me
very
nuts.
blessed to be able to do those things.
Yeah.
And like, you're not complaining that you have to walk 100 miles or put out 9 cameras
love
and
it.
do all those things.
Love it.
It's just annoying when someone says, "Oh, you're just lucky."
I got guys that I grew up with, same age. They ain't walking 6 miles looking for sheds. Let's be honest.
Well, some of them are just unfit,
Yeah,
unhealthy.
Maybe they'll walk to the mailbox and back. Take their quad to the back of their field.
Yeah, probably take the quad
Pour
to the
some
mailbox.
apples out. That's their fitness level.
Yeah.
And then, why do you think so many guys die every year from pulling out deer? Because they're not even physically fit enough to pull their game out of the woods. So
We're gonna bulldoze you guys on the podcast. Like,
yeah.
we're gonna say some blunt things to maybe like trigger you into like, no more taking that fucking quad to the mailbox.
Yeah.
Walk.
Well, I mean, they should be filling their bags and taking hikes and getting ready for the season. And the older you get, the more important it is to make sure that your fitness level is up. I mean, how many guys fall out of their tree stands a year and break their back because they're not using the proper gear, they're not using safety gear, and they just old school, or they leave their tree stand strapped to a tree and it buckles with the tree, and now it's broke down the straps, and they get into it and they think they're good, and they go to check it out and they fall out of their stand. And if they would have just had a harness on, they would have been safe. And if they would have taken their stands out of the woods and checked them, like, you know what I do this time of year? Like, we have written down here, one of the things I wanted to talk about is this. All right, so we're coming close to the spring of the year. What should you be doing? Well, number one, you should be going out. You should be shed hunting. You should be going out and finding beds at the bare minimum and keeping track of those and putting waypoints in your phone or whatever you got, or marking it down. And then going back and checking those and trying to find sheds. Why? So you can locate big deer, because there's no better way to locate big deer than to find where they drop sheds, because they made it through the last year. And it's fun, and it keeps your fitness level up. Go do it. But more than that, you should be taking an inventory of your gear. That's what the spring is for. What's my bowstring look like? What do my arrows look like? Do I need more broadheads? How are my boots holding up? All my camo good? Do I need any new under layers? Are there any holes in my game when it comes to my gear that's going to hold me back from being able to hunt? Is there anything that I need to save money up for that I need to buy by September so that way I have it? Like, do I need a new bow? Do I need new boots? Do I need an ozone machine? What do I want to use? Right? And they should be making those plans now so that way they can get ready, because a lot of us have families, a lot of us have kids, a lot of us have, significant others that you can't just take $1,000 in August without saving up and just put it towards that without causing a problem.
I think we should do like a checklist guide, and
We probably should put out a
probably
guide.
put it in the
Things that you should be doing in your, basically like the first 10% of your season. Like, when I say deer season never ends for me, it's because I transition right into shed season when we go out of the late season. And so there are certain things that I do now that I don't do the rest of the year because it needs to be done now. It's mandatory now, and I've learned it over the years that if you don't get things done in the proper fashion, then now when you're supposed to be starting to shoot, now you're looking at your gear. Now you're taking up your time. You're preoccupied when you should be honing your craft as far as a marksman, like to shoot. And you're like looking at your gear, or oh, my boots now have holes in them and I haven't saved up the money, and now you're burdening your family, your wife, or your girlfriend, whatever.
This is the get everything in order, get everything in line, get everything in set.
Because
this is what I need. I need someone like this in my life.
It leads to peace for me.
Yeah,
right?
And you get to go enjoy what you like to do. And
January comes, I know what I should be doing. February comes, I know what I should be doing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I know when I need to start shooting my bow every year. Mm-hmm. Like, it's probably different than most people. There's a lot of people that shoot year-round, but they're putting all those extra strikes on their bow. I don't do it. Guys, like, maybe you don't agree with this, but, like, every August 1st, religiously, I start shooting my bow. So that way I get a month and a half in, and by the time I get to the season, I'm a killing machine. Do I shoot year-round? Do I shoot in tournaments? Do I do all... I don't. Have I? Sure. But, like, what I do from year to year doesn't have to be what you do every year. And you got to do what you need to kill effectively and to harvest those animals. Because at the end of the day, like, I know those 45 days that I invest before the season, that if I have to kill a monarch opening day, I can do it at 50 yards, at 60 yards. Right? Like, I'm not going out and being like, I haven't shot enough yet. My effective range is only 20 or 30 yards because I just started shooting last week. No. I've looked at my bow in the spring of the year and I've said, okay, I need a new string. I want to get a new sight. I need a new rest. I need new arrows, whatever it may be. I make that plan so I have them. So starting August 1st, I have everything I need and we're up and running. I mean, I think the last time that I blew something like on August 1st and wasn't able to shoot is because my rangefinder's battery went dead. And like I had checked it a couple weeks before and it was good, and I don't know what happened, but I started to use it and I got through a couple arrows and it just died.
Excuse to me.
Right, so guess what I have now?
Probably went and got a tape measure. No,
tape measure. That too, right? I'll talk about that in a second.
Probably did your feet.
I keep an extra battery now. I literally do. It's in my bag every year. I buy new ones too because I sit out in so much cold that I feel like it affects the battery. But I have one because I'll be damned if I sit in my tree stand and have that die. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you brought up a good point. When I first started hunting, we used to pace off everything. So what I mean by that is there weren't rangefinders. So my dad would lay out a tape measure and we would effectively pace what's 10 yards, what's 20 yards, what's 30 yards, what's 40 yards. And we would know based on our own individual gait, basically how long our strides are, how far that was.
That's awesome.
And as we got older, it changed, right? Because when I was 12, I was shorter than I am now, right? So if you got an injury, that all changes. But like if you know that your effective range is 40 yards, you should know what that pacing structure is.
That's so awesome.
Because
that's so great.
What can you do? Let's say you forget your rangefinder and you get out to the woods and you're like, shit. Literally, you could take 2 sticks. You can pace out away from your stand, pace it out, stick a stick in. You haven't had your headlight on or anything. You barely made any extra noise, but at least you're getting out. You're in a new area. You put out the stick. You know that it's paced off correctly, so when you're sitting in your stand, that's 40 yards. Now, from that, you can ascertain the next 10 yards. You can say, okay, that's about 50 after that. I can see where 30 is, and anything inside there is my first pin. It's over. Mm-hmm. Right? So I always put it at 40.
That's so great. Like, you literally control. You don't need any tech. You literally control and don't let any situation...
Yeah, I mean, I keep an extra release in my backpack in case I forget it. I've only done it once, and I'll never do it again, right? Like, I buy 2. I always keep one in a Ziploc bag. I make sure that it's fully functional. I still shoot with it, but literally if it comes down to it and I go a mile back, I'm not walking back to the truck. I'm not walking back to the car to go get my release because I forgot it, right? And it's like, this checklist and the things that you're talking about, it'll benefit anybody. Like, what do you need for opening day? Like, one of the most frustrating things for me is my youngest brother. I've hunted with him, and
Yeah, my youngest sister frustrates me too.
Sometimes though he'll show up and he's not ready. Like he hasn't gone through his bin. He hasn't made sure it's scent safe. Like one year we're going out and we have all these big bucks and we're going out in the afternoon and I'd already hunted the morning, but he shows up midday and he's excited and he's taking on his bow and I'm watching him shoot and I was like, how long you been shooting this year? He's like, it's first day. What? Like, holy shit, at least you're effectively, like, hitting the bullseye, like, the 10 ring or whatever at freaking 30 yards, but, like, I wouldn't feel comfortable with you shooting 40, so now I'm changing where I'm going to put him on the stand, because I pretty much control that in my family, like, okay, you're going here, you're going here, you're going here. And he's just like, well, I don't want to sit there. Well, you can only shoot fucking 30 yards, so that's where you're sitting, right? And then it's like, starts taking his clothes out of his bin, and it kind of smells musty, and I'm like, did you put your clothes away wet? Did you not check your fucking clothes like I told you to? Like, this is the type of shit that you have to deal with. And when I talk about educating deer, it can be your own family members, it can be other hunters, it can be all these things. And when you talk about, well, when you go out with me and you're like, oh, you've had to up your game. Well, yeah, because if we sit together, especially, right, there's 2 people creating scent, 2 people creating movement, right? You have to get 2 people in and out. Everything matters, especially when you're trying to shoot big deer.
Yeah, I always see the big bucks, so I need to tell you.
Guys, communication in the stand is, like, so key. I've literally sat in the stand with her, and we're out there looking for big deer, and I got my whole 180 view good. And we're packing up, and it's like 10, 11 in the morning, and it's like, all right, let's call it. Deer bed down's getting too hot. So we start getting down. She starts telling me how she saw 4 bucks. And, Miranda's fairly new to hunting. She's going on her 3rd year, but she's learning fast, and she's enjoying it. But I don't think she understands, like, what I would have did, right? Like, okay, you see a big buck, and he's 80 yards away, but you don't tell me. And so maybe I would have called to the deer, and he would have came over. Maybe I would have rattled, and he would have came over. Like, but if I don't know he's there, I'm literally, I'm like complacent, like on my side of the woods, not seeing anything, thinking she must not be seeing anything either, because every damn deer I see, Miranda, here comes a doe. Miranda, here comes a buck. So she gets ready, so she turns her hips, so she gets stood up. So, like, because she's new, I want to make sure I give her enough time to do all these things rather than let them just get up on us, right?
Oh, yeah, but then the time I did point out the deer to you, you're like, where is it? I don't see it. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? You're like, you can't, I'm like, shh, quiet.
So there's all kinds of different frustrations that can happen in the stand, but at the end of the day, like, I was listening to Gary Vee today, and he said something, and it's like, Gary Vee. It's super profound. It's like he wakes up every day and he just knows he's going to make mistakes. In fact, he, like, tells him that every morning himself, that he's like, I'm going to make mistakes today. He just, like, prepares himself for it. Some people, I think a guy in that interview is just like, well, that's like a failures mentality or some bullshit. He's like, no, it's an honest mentality. Like, I'm going to make mistakes. I can't be perfect. Right? You just can't. So you got to accept it. Now, how you deal with those challenges or those obstacles, those matter, and your attitude and all that stuff matters. But if you go to the day knowing that you're going to make mistakes, like, especially when it comes to hunting, I'm not going to walk in perfectly. Like, yep, I'm gonna try to go down my trail. I'm not going to use a light, but for all I know, that buck and that doe are on the damn trail. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to spook them.
Or step on a big stick.
Step on a branch, snap, and you hear the deer run away and fuck. And then you get in your own mind. Yeah, you hear the howlings. So anything can happen, right? But it's how you deal with it. And the adversity is a thing with hunting. It's like, how many times have I sat in my bulldozer side, came out, where opening day I'm sitting, and I see a deer go in. Big deer. I'm like, fuck it. Take my stand down. Literally moved. I'm checking out the weather patterns so I can see where the wind's going to be going tonight. I rehang my set and leave. Come back in the afternoon and shoot that deer. Why? Because I was aggressive. People be like, oh my God, I can't believe you moved your stand open day. It's like, no time like the present. Like, I know that deer went in on that trail. There's a good likelihood he's going to come out on that trail. Because he hasn't been educated to any human activity yet. You might as well give it a go. Make sure you're on the downwind side. Don't let him know that you're there. Don't go in there and make a bunch of noise. If he crossed 80 yards over here, go 150 yards this way, so that way you're far enough away from where he might have been so you don't spook him or educate him, and then hope that he comes back in daytime.
Yeah, that luck thing.
Well,
Like, no, like...
there's like a magic to it.
Okay, sure, there's like a luck, but then if you literally see the deer over there...
Yeah. I mean, but how many guys... I don't know how many times I've heard this story over the years. Like, man, I sat that stand and I saw that buck again. That monster buck came into my apple tree and was eating it. Well, how far is it away? 45 yards, and my max range is 40. Okay, great. Did you hang a new set? No. I'm just going to go out there tomorrow, and if he comes back in, I hope he comes in from the other side, because if he comes around the other side of the tree, I'll get a shot. Same thing, same program. Deer comes in, same fucking trail, walks up to the apples, eats on the opposite side of the tree, and then leaves, and he never gets a shot. This happens over 2 weeks. Sure, you're having interactions with the steer. It's really cool to see him. You're getting good pictures of him on your scouting camera. You're bragging everybody you got this 150 class deer. It's awesome, and he's coming in every day. And literally, if he would have just got aggressive, had sticks and a hang on, you could have went and cut him off coming in, and you could have got a shot at him. Instead, he just sat there and basically watched this deer for 2 weeks, and then some doe came into estrus, and he's gone and out of your life forever and on somebody else's wall.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So, here in Wisconsin, just snowed. We're getting out, we're looking at sheds, trying to find them, trying to find beds. It's a magical time of year because this is where you start building your knowledge for the whole year and the deer that you have left. And if you can still run cameras and you have property where that's allowed, every state's different, but you can start to get your herd numbers. I expect there's going to be a bumper crop of fawns this year because there's been such a mild winter and there's been such good foliage. I just imagine the deer had a really good winter for the first time in a long time, and I think state numbers are messed up. I think since they changed registration stations, took back tags away, I just don't think people are calling in the deer like they used to, and I think it's a problem. And I think a lot of times they're going off the numbers that the sportsmen put in for the year and the deer that they've seen, and it doesn't actually match up because I'll just make this deer go away. Poof, I'm going to cut it up and put it in my freezer, and I didn't call that doe in, or hey, I shot a 6-pointer, but I don't want to claim that deer, so I'm just going to cut it up. It's going to go away, and then I'm going to shoot a monster buck, and then I'm going to claim that one. Like, this shit happens.
How often do you see a DNR?
I mean, frequently.
Really?
Yeah.
I've only saw DNR once when I was fishing. I've never seen DNR when we were hunting.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? Like, a lot of times if you have private land, you're not going to see them as much, but they frequent public land. Bringing Luke out when he was younger, give you sports cards, or just thank you for mentoring young deer hunters, and it's good. A lot of people see the DNR as a bad thing, but in a lot of ways, their capabilities have been limited or taken away from them by doing like this online registration and these phone calls, and then trespassing has been 300% worse since it took away back tags. Why? Because people can get away with it now. You're trying to use a scouting camera that might not have a good angle or a good look at them, so now you don't know who it is. But if they would have had a back tag on, those numbers are clearly defined. You're going to see them, and so there's a lot of issues with my biggest problem. The thing that I would like to say that I'd like to see change is registration stations. I would like that human interaction brought back, where you have to go to your local watering hole, gas station, wherever is that local whitetail registration station. They have to go there, and that there's a DNR there and checking people and making sure that they're legal, they're not boozing or on drugs, and that it's a legal animal, and just ask the appropriate questions, so that way we get good deer numbers, but then we also cut down on all the illegal activity and all the craziness, because a lot of the culturally bad things that are happening within the hunting heritage is because we've made these boneheaded changes to registration. I don't understand it. Yeah, that's my soapbox. That one really bothers me. God, I remember going to the registration station and as a 12-year-old and seeing all the big bucks come in and talking to the guys about how they shot them, and like that was a part of the camaraderie of hunting that was important. They've taken that away from us, and now it's like, you shoot it and then you put it on social media, but how many guys like drive around and show it off in their community, and how many people at the registrations back in the day would then advocate and say, oh my God, did you hear that, Josh or Matt or this person or Tyler or Schumacher or any of these guys, they shot this big deer, and then the whole community would find out, and then people are calling you on your landline and come see the deer. And that's the time when people are celebrating and popping some beers. It's like, you just shot the monarch of your woods, you just shot the big deer of your woods. And somehow, some way, we lost that because we thought, well, we'll make it easier for people, put it on apps, and they'll be able to take care of it. But what ended up happening is it allowed the people with low hunter integrity or ethics to then skirt the system, and now we're not getting the right numbers in. Like the state of Wisconsin, they say that there's deer fucking everywhere, and it's like I used to see a shit ton more when I was a kid when they had registration stations, and personally, I think it's a 1-to-1. And then on top of that, the people that are mandating the amount of deer in an area, I don't think they're doing right by us in what we would like to see as hunters. They're just assigning numbers that they think that we should have, and it comes down to the people that are making the laws, the people that we're voting for, and the lack of that. Like sometimes these positions, they aren't voted for. Sometimes these positions that are making the laws when it comes to hunting, they've just been appointed, right? And these people that are appointed, like on any given year, they could be somebody that went to school for it, or they could just be somebody who is like on the party line who just wants to do what that person wants to do. And then I'm not going to get too far into the politics of it, but
can you like go to these meetings like when they have like?
Of course, you can go down to the state capitol and you can picket and you can say that you want things. You can write your legislators, like you can write your governor, you can write all these people. But at the end of the day, like, you know how many surveys come out a year where they ask us questions?
Yeah, I got one on the.
Yeah, everybody should be filling those out. But how many times have people fill it out and then?
I got it sent to me twice because I didn't fill it.
Are they the type of person who's just like, well, I don't want registration stations because I like to be able to live in the gray? Or are they going to write, I saw 3 deer, I shot this deer, and they're 100% truthful with everything?
It's a huge survey.
It's a huge survey, but how many people? I'd like to know what the percentage is on that survey coming back. So let's say they send out 100. Are they getting 90 back? You know what I mean? Like,
why send it on paper if you're gonna put everything online anyway?
But like, how many people are gonna log in to Go Wild in Wisconsin and fill out surveys? I will, but that's part of hunter ethics. That's part of like being a good woodsman and hunter. I think that's part of their
social media though that they're probably not promoting. Maybe on their social media profiles or platforms that they could be doing that. Yeah. They're not. We could.
Couple more things. So I talk about fitness quite a bit when it comes to deer hunting because to me it's a sport. The way that I hunt, the way that I get after shed hunting, the way that I hang sets and hunt in general, filming it especially when I'm making TV for the outdoors, it's a grind. Mm-hmm. And you got to be physically fit for it. And one of the notes that you had written down that we talked about was, when should I start weightlifting? And what she's referring to is the draw cycle. Like, when should I start working on that? So
I was thinking about making like a challenge or like some kind of like guide or something like that on it.
Yeah, I mean, when you first start out and you're like 12 years old, in the state of Wisconsin, I think it's like 40 pounds is the legal pullback, which isn't a lot. But as you mature and get older, especially as a man, you can just handle more weight. And so you naturally bump up to 45 and then 50 and 55. I shoot 70 now. I'm not going to hand you my bow and think you're going to do a draw cycle even at 80 pound or 80% let off and think you're going to do that well. Mm-hmm. And so what does it come down to? Well, if you don't want to shoot your bow at 45 pounds this year, you got to start training your muscles to be able to draw cycle back something heavier. But it's not your max. Could I pull back a 80 or 90 pound bow if I had to? Some crazy Alaskan bear bow or some craziness? Sure. But like 70 is comfortable for me. There's no struggle. It's just straight cycle back. It's not put the bow in the air because it's too much for you and tip it down. It's none of that. And so, wouldn't you be working on it until you're happy with it? If you don't like the weight you're pulling back, well, then you got to put some time into it. But the only way that you're going to get it is to do it. So you got to train with fitness. Well, You want to be able to walk 6 miles in the spring of the year and go looking for sheds? Well, I hope you're active in the middle of winter. You know? Like, you're not just going to go out and be able to walk 6 miles and have that safe, depending on your age, of course. But, I mean, staying physically fit as you age, as you do anything, people trust you more if you're physically fit. I mean, you hear these leadership guys, it's like when a guy walks in a room and he's got the dedication or discipline to being in good shape, what does that tell you? That tells you that this man is dedicated, or this woman is dedicated to themselves enough to where you should be able to trust them more than the fat person next to them that doesn't care enough about themselves to keep them physically fit. And I'm sure there's all these people out there like, oh man, I'm 200 pounds and I hunt every year and I shoot bigger deer than you, blah, blah, blah. Do you drag your own deer out of the woods? Can you? Could you cross a river? Could you walk a mile back? Could you have
There's
that whole experience?
in your life that you're not winning.
Yeah.
And that's not in that area is your health.
If you're going to tell me that every year you shoot this big buck because you got certain fields planted and that's your thing, do it, man. That's not the experience I want. I'd rather go out to a big tract of land, pattern some deer. If that's a mile in, a half mile in, 2 miles in, I don't give a shit. I can do it all. But what happens, like my dad used to say, when you let an arrow fly, that's when the real hard work begins. Then what? Are you using a deer cart? Are you using a deer sled? Are you just dragging the deer out? What time of year is it? Like, all of these things matter, but at the end of it, like, you know what helps you out in all aspects of life is your physical fitness and your general health. You know? Like, if you're not physically fit enough to pull a deer out, I hope you have friends. You know? I hope you got a party that you can call up and you and your 3 friends can go out and you can take turns pulling that deer 20 yards at a time.
We're not talking about the people who are, like, medically incapable or have kind of, like, the issues where you can't. It's...
A lot of people will say, oh, I'd never use crossbow unless my shoulder gave out. Okay, I'm one of those people too. Why? It's not the experience I want, but if you wanted to use a crossbow and that's what you told me, I'd be completely okay with it, but I would demand a couple things. Number one, that you still used it enough to be able to effectively harvest an animal. Like, I don't want you to sight it in once and then you never use it again until you're in the tree stand. It's not going to work for me. I think as easy as crossbow hunting has got, what's missing is the development of skills over time with compounds and traditional archery that made you invest that time in kind of vicariously made you a better hunter because you're investing that time. It's important to you. Well, if you're investing all that time and it's important to you, then you're going to make sure that you do all the other necessary things. You're not going to skimp. But if your thing is
put it on someone else.
My brother-in-law sighted in this crossbow for me last week. I'm flying in now. I'm going to use it, and I've never shot it before. I get up, I pack it out there. I don't even know how to cock the thing. Someone else has got to cock it for me. Now they handed me this loaded weapon, and I'm going to go. I don't want any part of that. It's not what I'm doing. Now, if you can effectively kill and you can have fun doing that, great. You're not going to do it with me.
Don't be a lazy bones. Like, if you're gonna go and be the deer hunter and you're gonna shoot the deer, and then you expect someone else to pull it out of the woods for you.
Yeah.
No. Like, you gotta be able to do everything in your life. Like, if you
shoot that deer, you better damn well gut it yourself.
Right.
You better. Like, you don't have to learn how to process a deer if you don't want to. There's plenty of people that actually make money doing that. I don't care. But, like, there's kind of like a rite of passage, too. It's kind of like not cleaning your fish, or it's kind of like, if you can't do some of these things, it's weird to me. It's like, well, are you just a trophy hunter that goes down to Texas and pays $10,000 to $20,000 to get put on a stand, you shoot a deer, and then you brag to your friends how you're a big whitetail hunter? Good for you. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it. And there's big money made with whitetails, with everything from insemination to just different things that happen with the whitetail realm that's good and bad. Taking different genetics from like Wisconsin and Texas and mangling them together and making these freakish deer and then feed them protein and I don't care. Whatever you guys want to do.
You're not
just don't expect me to want to do it.
Yeah.
Shit, I've been in a scenario one time where I was in Texas, and a guy was in a blind, and I was supposed to be filming. And what we didn't realize is it was the smallest enclosure within a big enclosure. The big enclosure was like 400 yards, and then there was a half enclosure that cut it down to 200 yards, and then there was another one that cut it down to 100, and another one that cut that in half. But when you get brought in, you kind of go through these Jurassic Park gates. You come in, and it looks like you're in this giant sanctuary with all kinds of random crazy axis, whitetails, I mean, you name it, Nilgai, like the craziest shit. And if you don't know what a Nilgai is, look it up. It's like a cross between like a horse, and it's got zebra lines on it and crazy long hair. It's wild. And the first time I got in this space, it was dark, so I was like, wow, we went to this big enclosure. What I didn't realize is depending on what you paid for the hunt, you would get put in certain enclosures. Okay? So if you were a $20,000 guy, there might be a 180 to a 200 class deer in this one enclosure, but it's small. And then if you're in the 160 range and you're paying $10,000, then you're going to be in this 100-acre enclosure. But if you're another one and you're only paying $5,000, now you're going to be put in this big enclosure. There might be a couple big deer, but most of the deer in there are 120, 130 or whatever, right? And like they don't tell you that, but that's how they push you around. Like all these people say, like there's all this free chase and all this bullshit. I'm telling you, man, like most of these TV shows, when they go to places, they're literally going to places in kill shacks. They could have feeders on either side that you can't see. The one feeder runs, and when that one's done, then this feeder runs over here, and those deer walk from point A to point B right past your setup, and they make it seem like it's all natural, and then they shoot it, and like people are going to be like, oh, well, I don't know where you're hunting, because that... No, this shit is hidden. This is part of the industry. I know it's happened. I've been in it. And they're
it's
not...
like a girl wearing makeup or putting filters on her pictures, or like it's just like it's like fake. It's just like it's
Imagine
like
being in your stand
genuine.
and them running like a UTV, like an electric UTV down the back of a property, pushing all the deer towards you, and you see all these deer that weren't there 3 minutes ago, and you're like, oh my God, you had these patterns just like you said. But it's literally a guy running something down like 100 acres away from you, pushing all the deer towards that edge of that area. And
Oh, that doesn't sound like ethical. That doesn't seem like
it's
ethical.
all legal. I mean,
I don't know. Like it doesn't. What? Ugh.
here's the thing though, right? Like there's some
You
guy
do you, but whatever.
who doesn't have the time to invest. He just wants to shoot a big deer, and he wants to
Put it on
brag to his
wall.
put it on his wall, and he wants to brag about it, and that's fine. Do your thing. Okay, you want to go there and do that? Great. But you're not from the same thread as me. Mm-hmm. You're not hunting like I do. You're not investing in it, and that's fine. And maybe he's even shot more big deer than me. Don't care. Because, like, when it comes down to me, what is hunting for me? It's an experience. But also, I'm, like, immersed in it, right? Like, it's part of my life. When I say deer hunting never ends, it's because it doesn't, because it's part of me. Mm-hmm. It's, like you said in the beginning of the podcast, I tell places when I work for them, I'm going to be gone in November. Like, this is non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. I don't care how much you pay me. I don't care what this job or this position is. If you can't grab me my November, some other place will enjoy me working for them, innovating for them, running their business.
Yeah.
Period. You want me to run camera for you? Cool. I'll go and run camera in November, and I'll sit in a tree stand, and you better pay me good, though, if you're making me miss the rut in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. Like, real good. Because, like, I'll crush it for you, but at the same time, like, if that means I have to give up my rut hunt with my brothers, with my family, that experience that I look forward to every year, it's going to be a big amount of money to get me to budge off of that. Big.
Yeah. It might not even be.
No, and here's the thing, like, the older I get and the more years that go by, I realize how important those moments are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. None of us know if we're going to even make it to this next season. I have all these great memories, and I created all this great stuff, and last year was great, and I'm just hopeful that I'm fit enough and healthy enough that I'm going to make it through another season. I'm already planning on it and already working on it. But you don't know. It's not guaranteed.
Yeah. Speaking of that, let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap it up. Mm-hmm. Okay. The very last thing that we have written down here, and we won't get into it too long because I have an expert I'd like to bring on to the next podcast, but food plots. Guys, if you're into food plots, if you're into deer management, if you're trying to control your buck-to-doe ratios, if you're in general, just worrying about habitat development. I got this earth scientist. He's worked for some of the biggest seed companies. He works for a co-op in the area. Like literally, this guy is like one of the biggest whitetail enthusiasts I know, and I want to have him here on the show, and I want to talk about that because
he's gonna be a treat.
Yeah, he's gonna be a treat.
Oh my gosh, he's gonna be a treat.
He may not
Not
be.
only is he like super smart, but he has a witty personality. Like he's
Yeah.
gonna be fun to listen to.
He's one of those people where if I ask him a question, how I'm able to talk about whitetails, he can do the same. Mm-hmm. But if you start to ask him about the things he specializes in when it talk about soil science and food and developing habitat for deer, like literally he lives and breathes it. That's what he does. And I'm
He's
looking
another
forward.
bulldozer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. It's going to be good. And if it's something that you want to learn more about or you want to do yourself, definitely tune in. It's going to be great. I appreciate the conversation today.
Yeah, we'll link the next video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just check out more of these podcasts. This is number 2. Number 3 is coming in hot very soon. Mm-hmm. All right, well, thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure. Remember, stay safe out there. Bring a young kid hunting. The only way that this is going to continue on is to mentor and to pass down the heritage and to pass down your traditions and make sure that you're doing it the right way with integrity and ethics involved, and just enjoy the hunt. Thank you for tuning in to the podcast. We'll see you next week.